History is filled with events so chilling that even the highest-ranking generals were afraid to speak of them. Imagine a night in 1944 where an entire German field hospital vanishes into a snowstorm. No shots fired, no struggle, just a haunting silence. Today's story isn't about snipers or tanks. It's about Elena, a head nurse who was captured by the Soviets. But what happened to her was far more terrifying than any physical injury. It was a war fought inside the mind. Welcome to Aviation Tales. And today we are entering the psychological hell of the silent cells, where the goal wasn't to kill the body, but to erase the soul. Watch until the end because the true cost of this war was a price no human should ever have to pay. Elena was taken to a clandestine Soviet facility that looked less like a prison and more like an abandoned asylum. There were no chains or whips here. Instead, she was locked in a stark white room with no windows and no sense of time. The Soviet psychologists had one mission: to extract the medical secrets of the Reich buried in Elena's memory. They didn't break her bones. They used sensory deprivation. For hours, she was left to float in a pitch-black tank of water, where the only sound was her own heartbeat. Slowly, the silence began to scream. Elena started to experience vivid hallucinations. The faces of the wounded soldiers she couldn't save began to crawl out of the shadows. Every night, she was strapped to a chair and subjected to low-frequency sound noises that the human brain cannot process, slowly driving the victim toward insanity. The Soviet officers would sit across from her for hours in total silence, just watching. Whenever she begged for mercy, they uttered only 3 words: tell the truth. Her meals were laced with salt to keep her in a state of constant thirst, but every drop of water was held hostage in exchange for a secret. They fed her false news of her family's death and stripped away her name, referring to her only as Subject 402. It was a torture that left no bruises, but turned her internal world into ash. Weeks later, Elena was no longer the nurse who saved lives. She was a shadow that whispered to the walls. When she was finally moved to a labor camp, she had completely forgotten who she was. She could only repeat the haunting frequencies she heard in that white room. Even when she was released in 1950 and returned to Germany, her mind remained trapped in that basement. This story serves as a dark reminder that the most lethal weapons in war aren't bombs, but the psychological games that delete a person's identity. Do you think a broken mind is a fate worse than death? Let us know in the comments. For more deep and untold history, subscribe to Aviation Tales. We'll see you in the next one.